everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Let me start today's proceedings by inviting our speakers, Mr. Paritosh Joshi and Mr. Partha Rakshit in front. I now request Mr. Walter Vieira, a trustee of Moneylife Foundation, to formally introduce Mr. Partha Rakshit.
It's a privilege to introduce Mr. Partha Rakshit, and he's been 40 years in the field of marketing and market research. There is a lot that I can say about him, but presently I'm making it very brief. He is an independent marketing consultant, and he was, until 2010, he was the managing director South Asia for the Nielsen company. He is a graduate of the Bajaj Institute of Management and now would be 40 years of experience. I invite Rakshit to come and tell us his views on this.
Good evening, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to address all of you guys here. The first one regarding fairness cream. Let me first tell the audience here that, besides those 4 chapters, we have actually, for a few categories, we have additional guidelines. One is for children under 13 years of age in terms of food and beverages, because this is a very important aspect of advertising, and we felt, and the CCC felt, that certain extra guidelines were required. So that was one category. The second category was in the automotive industry, and the third one is on educational institutions. So we have actually institutions, as a whole. Education is, because there's so many ads offering 100% guarantee after you've gone through this course and so on, that one needs additional guidelines in terms of judging whether the advertising is as per ASCI's norms or not. So similarly, Sucheta, on fairness, we've now constituted a committee. I'm not sure whether you're aware of that, which will actually deliberate and put guidelines on this whole fairness aspect. Because again, this comes from the CCC, because the CCC says there's not enough guidelines for us to really judge whether the advertising on fairness is to be upheld or not upheld, and then the board gets into it. So that's to answer your question on fairness. On the question of financial advertising, so far the board has felt that the first chapter on honest or dishonest actually covers that. Financial advertising might be a separate entity. It involves a whole lot of money, etc. But the basic tenet of honesty or dishonesty applies as much to financial advertising as it does to any other. So we have not, unless the CCC actually says that it is required, look at a separate guideline for financial advertising. But we are certainly open to that. The third one, which is on this whole aspect of government advertising, I think Bharat has made it clear that government advertising on commercial aspects, which is, let's say, an ICICI bank, or not an ICICI, which is a private bank, or let's say an SBI, that would come under the remit of ASCI. Now, and the board has deliberated, there was a split in the board on this just a couple of months ago, is that the remit of ASCI, if you look at it, again, Brahm, I would, as the founder, as the chairman who will actually integral part in writing this, is that the remit is given to us by the guys who are by the advertiser. So it was felt by the board that the government has not given us this remit. So maybe it is beyond the stretching ASCI's thing to say that we will be self-regulating on something who is not a self-regulator. The government is not part of the advertiser agency fraternity. So in that sense, we felt that it may be beyond the remit. So there was not a consensus there, but the majority of the board felt that. So that's where we are today.
So, we've got veterans of ASCI sitting right up front here, but at the back, how many people have heard of ASCI? 1, 2, 3, okay, not bad, pretty good. Okay, so it's about 20%, I'd say, 1 out of 5. Not bad. We've got a way to go, but it's getting there. So what we've got in store for you today is to give you some idea of what ASCI is all about, and I'm going to be very brief about that. But more interesting would be what Paritosh is going to say, which is to give you some examples of what constitutes bad advertising, or advertising which is against the grain of ASCI, and how we as ASCI try to get people to go to the right path. So my part is really to tell you a little bit of what ASCI is about, how it started, and so on, and I'll take just about 10 minutes to do that. So the Advertising Standards Council of India, as you can see from this slide, was formed in '85, almost 30 years ago. And it is a self-regulatory body. Now that's very important, and that's why I put it in red there. So there could be bodies which are which the government actually, like the censor board perhaps, is a good example, where the government has actually got people to have appointed people to look at films and see whether they are up to the mark in terms of their standards and so on. But self-regulatory means that the very people who create the advertising are the people who are ensuring that the advertising meets a minimum standard. And the minimum standard is in terms of decency of advertising, ethical advertising, and it's to see that the advertising is of fair play, and it's not deriding any particular group or any particular competitor. So the overarching goal of ASCI is to ensure truthfulness, honesty, and decency in advertising. Now you can see here, I've written here that there are three important sectors which constitute ASCI. The advertiser, who is actually in a sense the person who is most involved in the advertising, because it's his product or service that is being advertised. The agency which actually creates the advertising, and the media, whether it be the publications or the channels, which are actually the instrument by which the advertising is getting across to the consumer. So all these three segments are an important part of ASCI. If we had just one of them, probably wouldn't be as good. But all these three sectors constitute a very important part of ASCI. The subsidiary goal, which is, I would imagine, is a byproduct, is that it also helps preempt government or political interference. You know, if you regulate, you self-regulate, and if the self-regulation is good, then the government will not be disposed to come and put its little bit of interference into the advertising, like what perhaps might happen in censorship of films and so on. So it's important that there's no political interference in the industry. So it's an important goal, but it's not the reason, the raison d'etre, if you like, of ASCI. Raison d'etre is to ensure truthfulness, honesty, and decency in advertising, but this is a subsidiary byproduct of ASCI. And the fact that for 30 years we've been able to survive without political interference, I think is kudos to the good work that ASCI has been doing. Now, in terms of breaking this up, what I've shown you in the first slide in terms of decent, honest advertising, we have four chapters, and that's written in those 4 bullets there. The first chapter, be truthful and honest, and do not mislead consumers in terms of the message that you're delivering. Second is to be decent in terms of advertising. You could be truthful, but you could say it in a very indecent way. So that's something which we would be looking at. Third is not to promote unsafe products or depict unsafe actions. For instance, you might have seen some advertisements of motorbikes, etc., where the rider is riding it in such a dangerous way that kids may be persuaded to emulate that kind of action. So that's dangerous, and that's something that ASCI would frown upon. And the fourth one is to ensure fairness in competition. So while you're promoting your product, you really don't want to deride your competitor, although you are free to give facts about the competitor. I'm not going to go into big details about all these 4 because I want Paritosh to do that, but just to give you an overview of what ASCI is all about. Now, in terms of the structure, ASCI has 2 main components. The board of directors, which comprises those 3 segments that I told you about: the advertiser, the ad agency, and the media. And the fourth one is allied professions, people like myself in the market research industry, or people from educational institutions, or people from the PR profession. These people would be constituting the fourth segment of ASCI in terms of the board of directors. But it's important, although we have people, constituents who are really interested, or interested parties in advertising, that the advertising complaint, when it's judged, or when it's in front of the Consumer Council, they should not be vested interests totally who are looking at the ad. So it's important that we have people from civil society as well, people like we've mentioned here, advocates, heads of companies like the IIT, chemical engineering, and activists and social entrepreneurs. These people are, I would say, would be more unbiased, and they would also form part of the lay public. So it's important to have people in the Consumer Complaints Council, the people who actually look at the ads and say, yes, this ad is something which is against the ASCI code. And these people should not be people who are only from these professions, because you might then argue that they have a vested interest in keeping the ad alive, even if it doesn't meet the standards that we advocate. So we have people from industry and we have people from civil society. And earlier we used to have just one Consumer Complaint Council, and they used to meet once a month earlier, now once a fortnight. Now we've got so many complaints coming in that we have actually subdivided this into two CCCs. So they meet every fortnight, and they look at ads, and I'll go through the process with you. Just before I do that, let me also say that the concept of self-regulation in advertising is not unique to India. It's something that is practiced in at least 70 countries, right? And what we have done in ASCI is, when we first started ASCI, and we have some of the founder members here, including the founder chairman, we looked at what was happening in these countries outside of India, and that the best of all that has been inculcated and put into our codes. So it's not something which is peculiar only to India. Now, these are some of the countries where we have self-regulation in advertising. As I said, there are 70 countries. I just put some of them here. And you can see there's a wide spectrum, right from the largest, most developed countries to some of the less developed ones. Okay, so how does self-regulation work in India? So when a complaint is received, and you as a lay consumer could give a complaint, or it could be an institution like an educational institution, or it could even be the government. Sometimes the government gives ads to us which they think could be violating ethical standards in advertising. So it could be an individual institution or a government body which actually says, let's look at this ad and see whether that meets ASCI standards. It comes to ASCI, and I'll come to how you can actually approach ASCI in a separate slide. And then the ads are put forward to the CCC, the Consumer Complaint Council. And before that, let me just say that first, the advertiser is given a chance to respond to the complaint. So he or she, the advertiser would then give his reasons for why they think that the ad is appropriate and so on. And then with that, it would come to the CCC, and the CCC would deliberate upon that and finally give their verdict whether to uphold or reject the complaint. If the complaint has been upheld, then it goes back to the advertiser is told to remove the ad. And it also goes to the media, which is something which we've done more recently. So let's say the ad is in the Times of India. So besides notifying the advertiser, we would actually notify the publication and get the publication's help in removing the ad as well. And that works very well for smaller advertisers, who some of them, particularly in the field of education and in health, you might have seen all kinds of small 10 by 1 kind of column ads, which are some of them are quite reprehensible. So we may not even be able to trace the advertiser, but at least we can notify the media, and we get the help of the media to remove the ad subsequently, so subsequent insertions don't happen. The other thing that I've got here is something called NAMS. It's an acronym for, it's actually, you must have heard of TAM, which is the Television Audience Measurement Study, which does TV ratings. So because they do TV ratings, they also collect data. They actually have physical, a library of all the ads which are produced in India, both in the television and in print. They actually keep a recording of that. So we've got NAMS to actually go through ads which are produced every month, and we've given them the ASCI code of conduct, and there are guys sitting there who actually sift through these ads, and they actually shortlist the ads which they think, and we've trained them to do that, they think would not meet ASCI's ethical standards. Now that has been a huge fillip in terms of ASCI, because as consumers, as I said, here you've got about 20% who are aware of ASCI. How many of you would actually bother to write to us even if you found an ad was offensive, unless it really perturbs you? So besides consumers writing to us, we've now got a more proactive way of finding out whether ads are meeting ASCI standards and all through NAMS. So NAMS actually sifts through these ads every month. They give to us a short list of ads which they think are not appropriate, and then we have the CCC actually deliberate on those ads. And I'll show you the figures pre-NAMS and post-NAMS in terms of how the ASCI ads, the complaints have increased so tremendously. Now, after that is done, and if the ad has been upheld, as I said, we write to the advertiser, and the advertiser hopefully will remove the ad from henceforth. But even if he does not, mind you, this is a self-regulatory body. We don't have any judicial powers as such, except in the case of television. Because under the Cable and TV Act, we have been empowered as ASCI to actually get those ads removed if an advertiser does not, does not do so on their own accord. So we have some teeth as far as as TV is concerned. In press, we're still trying, but it's a long haul, and let's see how it works. Even TV took us a very long time to get there. But in general, I would say more than 90% of the times when ASCI says that this ad should be removed, the advertiser actually removes it. So that's a great achievement, I think, as far as ASCI is concerned. The reason, I'll come to it a little later. So that's the process. I think it's fairly clear, and Paritosh might elaborate on this something, but I think in terms of action, in how you can approach ASCI to complain, I've got this in the slide. There are 3 ways you can do this. You can actually ring up, and I think we've circulated a small flyer here which actually gives you these details. You can actually ring up toll free and we will accept your complaint, or you can send an email to us, or you can write a letter to the Advertising Standards Council. Once you've done that, we will acknowledge your complaint. We will actually give you a tracking number, and we will post to you every couple of weeks what's happening to for the complaint. And within a month, you'll know whether your complaint has been upheld or not. So that's something that we've done now, I think over the last 1 year, which actually helps the consumer figure out whether any action has been taken on his complaint, thanks to online. So how does self-regulation work in terms of the 90% that I told you? 90% of the ads I mentioned to you, actually the advertiser removes the ads when ASCI says so. The reason is quite simple. We have a huge number of members in ASCI, currently 350 members, and 2/3 of the value of advertising in India is released by our own members. So when you have an ad which ASCI has upheld in terms of the complaint belonging to one of our members, it's much easier to get action done. And because we have all the top advertisers, every single advertiser that is anybody in terms of advertising, whether it's FMCG or whether it's durables or services, we're all members of ASCI. It's only the tail which is your fly-by-night operators who are not members of ASCI. So it's much easier to get compliance because they are members. And I think one of the reasons we've been able to do this is because as the ASCI model, I must say, is something which I don't think is something which is there in all industries in India. We have the very top, in terms of whether it's P&G or Levers or what have you, it's the CEOs who are actually participating quite actively in ASCI, either in the board of directors or in the CCC. So when you have that top level engagement, it's much easier for the action to percolate down. So that's been a tremendous reason for ASCI's achievement, because we've got the guys, the top, who are backing ASCI within every industry. So we have 2/3 of the value of advertising released by all advertisers, agencies and media are our members. Of course, the code is applicable to all, and it's funded entirely by the member subscription. There is nothing from the government. So depending on the turnover of the company, whether it's a large company, they pay more. If it's a smaller company, they pay less. But it's entirely funded by the members who are the ASCI members. Now, I was just telling you about NAMS, the National Advertising Monitoring Service. So because it monitors such a humongous number of ads which come out every month, you can see in the slide that it monitors 45,000 new ads appearing in all leading newspapers. And that's a mind-boggling number. And 1,500 TVCs every month. So because of that, we are able to get much more in terms of ads which could perhaps be misleading or dishonest or indecent. And when you look at that in terms of what has happened to ASCI post-NAMS, you can see that the number of ads that we adjudicate on has increased several-fold. So pre-NAMS, 2010, 2011, 12, the first row there is basically complaints from the lay public or from intra-industry or institutions. And that, of course, also has increased from 190 to 176 to 205 and gone up quite a lot in this current year. But NAMS has given a different dimension to ASCI. So we've got 579 ads in the 9 months since it started in June 2012. And this year we've got 953 ads. So there's a total of 1,500 ads that we've adjudicated on in the last 1 year. So I think this is a tremendous achievement. I haven't got a comparison with other countries where there is a similar self-regulatory body, but we've I think been one of the people who've been the torch bearers of advertising regulation across the world. And I don't want to boast about it here in this forum, but we've also got several prizes as a result of that, and perhaps Alan towards the end can give you a breakdown of what we've achieved in that front. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Paritosh to actually look at those different chapters, the first 4 chapters that I mentioned in terms of types of advertising, and show you how we go about first adjudicating ads and give you a flavor of which ads we find as ASCI are not up to the mark and what has been happened to those ads. Thank you very much.